Hey, what's going on, everyone? Thank you for coming to watch. So I've got you guys an update on some very active storm systems that are really going to come into play as we get deep into January. All right, I just want to start off this video by apologizing about what I have done here. So there's a lot of hype going around, a lot of silly nonsense basically over who's gonna get snow, how much snow is gonna fall, and what's gonna happen in January because the models have picked up on a signal because of a big pattern change here of a very active January when it comes to snow. And this is not uncommon for the weather community to do this. So a lot of big channels are taking advantage of this for the views and are not sometimes not the views, but just they're showing data that isn't correct. All right, and so that I think I have taken a part of, and so I apologize about that. I don't think I've been too crazy with all this nonsense. All right, but I definitely think that I should just slow it down a little bit. All right, so I just want to talk about in this video also what you can expect for the beginning of January, the short term, and then the long term. We're just going to be talking about the signal. We're not getting deep into a forecast or anything because that is mostly incorrect information. That's just a signal, and I say that a lot, a signal of what could happen in the future, right? So starting out this video, you can see we've got two pieces of energy on either coastline here. We've got one piece of energy here in the west, all right, that is bringing a lot of rainfall. This is actually an all-rain event all the way up and down the coast. This is impacting the San Francisco area, all right, into San Jose and Sacramento, California. We're about to see some very heavy rainfall. All right, we've got a lot of flooding concerns down there. All right, this will pretty much push due east here, and that is our kickstart to our active pattern. All right, that's going to be our first piece of energy that gets to ride the jet stream. As the jet stream gets a little snaky here, it's not too active at the moment, but it will become active soon. All right, in the east, we've got the remnants of what used to be a big Christmas snowstorm here, which is still with us. Just the remnants of it here. We've got a little bit of snowfall here coming all the way from this was all the way up towards southeastern Minnesota and into portions of Iowa, and this has moved all the way down through the Ohio Valley and out of the Ohio Valley into portions of Virginia, where we're seeing some more upper elevation snowfall. All right, so maybe a few inches over there. Some rainfall, actually some lake effect rainfall starting to impact portions of upstate New York into Ohio and PA. All right, but other than that, it's we're pretty much mostly sunny for the most part. Some snow flurries, moderate to heavy snowfall going into portions of Maine. But that is pretty much it for the most part. So moving on here, we take a look at our current alerts. Nothing much, but you can see really scattered around here. We have winter weather advisories that we'll start at here in the Sierras. All right, we have really going up from north central California all the way down through central California and really the Sierras and the surrounding areas. We have winter weather advisories. We will be seeing some snowfall this evening, so be on the lookout for that. All right, we've got winter weather advisories going out for portions of Tennessee, really on the eastern side of Tennessee, but really close to central Tennessee. All right, this is going all the way up from north to south. All right, into the mountains of West Virginia, into Virginia. I believe these will get extended. That's where we have more winter weather advisories. And then up into our towards our folks in northern Maine, we have winter weather advisories, like we saw on the radar with that heavy snowfall coming in. That's what we see here with the winter weather advisories. And by the way, winter weather advisories are just issued when any form of precipitation that is winter related forms. And then anything above that is a winter storm watch, winter storm warning, a blizzard warning, etc. All right. In the gray shades here, we have dense fog advisories going out for portions of southern Washington State into northern Oregon, really crossing through the border there. Then in western Montana, I believe we have one or two counties out here that are under a dense fog advisory. Same thing for portions of Southern California. Then into southern Arizona, we also have dense fog advisories. All right. We have frost advisories going out for portions of, southeastern Georgia into northern Florida. All right. So pretty cold conditions, chilly conditions are going to come down here, and just be sure that maybe you want to park your car in your garage. I'm not too crazy and looking the science behind how you can escape getting frost on your car. But just make sure that you're aware that it will be pretty frosty out there tomorrow. All right. And then yeah, so that's gonna be pretty much it for alerts. So taking a look here, we're looking at we're looking at the Ohio Valley here, looking at the NAM model. We're taking a look at the snowfall. All right, that's going to be impacting portions of the deep Ohio Valley here into Tennessee and then the Smoky Mountains region here. This is going to be pushing off to the east. We see what was happening this morning into this afternoon. We had a pretty good band of snowfall moving its way across portions of uh, over portions of West Virginia into Kentucky here. We've got really light to moderate snowfall. No heavy snowfall showing up yet, but definitely a pretty substantial band of snow. All right, setting up over there. All right, this is going to be pushing to the southeast. This is just leftover energy. This has not even really got its own low. All right, so this is just got cold air with it. All right, and you can see it's not even attached to the jet stream. So this, if this were to form a low pressure, would be a cutoff low. They're kind of annoying here for forecasters because they have their own way to go because they're not attached to the jet stream, so they don't ride with the jet stream. They're just out in whatever cold front or warm front they're in. All right, but yeah, we can see a lot of snow. Could move as far south as North Carolina, maybe even South Carolina. I know there's a lot of winter weather lovers out there, even though you guys don't usually see it even this time of the year. All right, but snow could be seen as far north as Ohio and Pennsylvania, where we could actually see moderate snowfall. But I think this entire region should be on alert for some form of snowfall going through today and then into the rest of tonight. Obviously, we went through today. But you can see that this snowfall, it really doesn't make it that far. Getting into the rest of the night, the snow kind of fizzles out, if you want to put it that way. All right, and it gets influenced by that dry and very cold air. All right, so all that snow moves into Ohio, PA, and then eventually West Virginia. So maybe some mountain snow, but I don't think the snow will be capable of producing like an inch, maybe half an inch. But really after midnight, I think before midnight is when the accumulating snowfall could be in play. All right, but I think after midnight that should be moving off to the east or just fizzling out. All right, but what's behind it? Well, we've got a small like clipper-like system that's going to be coming in. We'll talk about that a little bit. That's going to be more of the medium term here, but I think this is it right here. That the NAM is picking up on. We can actually start to see more snow enter the region coming into Monday here. All right, so you got scattered snowfall, snow flurries impacting portions of Indiana and Ohio, but more substantial snow off into the northeast. We'll see that pull out, but really for the rest of the Ohio Valley, it's really going to be that one quick band of snowfall tonight, and then after tonight, you should be fine for a few days. So taking a look here at your snowfall totals, not that impressive, so it's really just going to be like a dusting to an inch of snow for our folks here in the portions of Ohio. Then really down south here, same thing for portions of Kentucky here into Tennessee. Really, nothing over half an inch, I would say. But if you're off to the east here where that heavier band was, the NAM is actually picking up on a few inches of snow here, and this could actually extend as far south as the border between Tennessee and North Carolina. A lot of mountain snow into West Virginia, but we could definitely see around 4 or 5 inches here into portions of southwestern PA. But really, 1 to 2 inches is the general amount really for everybody that is inside of this blue shade. But if you're in the darker blue towards the purple, all right, that's where you could expect maybe 3 to 5 inches of snow. All right, but I don't think that this is really going to be a significant snowfall event. And then we'll see for that next piece of energy that comes in and delivers some snow. We'll see the signal for that. All right, and we can see that'll probably bring in another inch or so of snow to the region by Tuesday. All right, so moving on here to the southwestern U.S., we saw that very heavy rainfall moving through it. So I want to go through this with you guys. So here it is. All right, this is 8 p.m. tonight. All right, we've got heavy rainfall moving into the coast of California here. And then so we get through the tonight here, and notice how this quickly changes over to snow as we get through the mountainous regions getting to 3, 4 in the morning. All right, tomorrow morning, but we're starting to get very heavy rainfall moving into portions of Northern California, and then also through Central California. That rain will be very heavy. All right, we're getting to the wee morning hours of tomorrow. We're getting 6, 7 in the morning here, and we're starting to see the heavier rain shift off to the south. We're starting to see the heavier rain. It's actually moving out of Northern California, rather going into portions of Southern California. So very interesting to see that there. That the heavier precipitation is shifting farther south, but here it is. All right, for Southern California, so Los Angeles, all right, and San Diego, that area, all right, even into San Francisco, we could definitely be dealing with some very heavy rain. I know, so looking at the radar, you could see San Francisco is really getting hit pretty hard at the moment. All right, but when does the heavy rain slow down? Well, it really takes to really all of the morning hours of tomorrow. We get to 9 a.m. We still got light to moderate rainfall falling in portions of southwestern California. Then that finally kind of just fizzles out. All right, but notice how we also do see in Northern California, these upper elevations. If you live near a mountain, you could definitely see some snow. All right, but yeah, we could definitely see some heavy snow for the mountains into California. All right, and then things should get pretty dry after that. We're getting into New Year's Eve. All right, which this looks like this is a Sunday. Yeah, I guess that is. Yeah, that is Sunday. All right. So we're getting to Sunday here, New Year's Eve, and we're going to be dry. Things are going to be very dry for really the entire western U.S., other than maybe some very, very light mountain snow. But here comes your second system coming in. It's going to be a lot weaker. All right. And right now all the NAM's picking up on is just maybe some rain showers. All right. But I think the next big system that comes in is probably not going to be until after New Year's Day. So taking a look here at our current projected rainfall totals. All right, nothing too crazy. I think there could be some isolated flooding out here. There is a level 1 out of 5, or I think a level 1 out of 4 risk, I should say, for excessive rainfall. That really extends from really midway up the coast of California down to the southern coast. Right there, that's where that general area is, and we can see on the NAM. We could see right around 2 inches of rainfall, so really 1 to 2 inches is what you could expect. Some lighter amounts are certainly possible, though, so really some areas we'll see half an inch to below half an inch, which is just at most gonna cause some ponding on those roadways. But some areas on the coast, though, I do think that are getting impacted right now. I think those are the areas that might see some of the excessive rainfall that could actually lead to flooding. But I think everyone else should stay dry enough to escape all that flooding. All right, so we're moving on here to this is the final part of the update that I talked about earlier in the update. So there's been a lot of hype going around. People are taking advantage of this big pattern flip that's looking likely into January. All right, and I just want to make sure that everybody knows why it's going to happen, what's going to happen, what won't happen. All right, so I don't want to hype things up too early. I just want to make sure that we know what's going to happen. We know what's going to happen in the short term because we don't want to miss anything. All right, but we definitely don't want to go too far in the long term without, visualizing that we are very far out and that things aren't expected to happen that far out. All right, so taking a look here at, we're looking at basically the top of the world here, and we're actually talking about a big stratospheric warm up. All right, and it's a very quick one. All right, a sudden stratospheric warm up. And so that basically means that we're at the top of the world. We're going to start to see a lot of ridging and a lot of above average temperatures up in the atmosphere start to build in place. All right, and so we're gonna call that blocking today. We're gonna get some blocking, which basically means that we're gonna see higher pressure, and which usually is associated with more above average temperatures. It's gonna start blocking out all this cold air and troughing, and which basically low pressure. All right. So this is your polar vortex right here. All right, this is let me switch my color here so you can see it. This is your polar vortex in this blue shade. All right, and it's looking a little bit wonky here. Usually, a strong polar vortex is very built up. It looks strong. It usually just a big circle here, but this is definitely widening out. All right, and so when you get a weak polar vortex, that's when the jet stream becomes influenced, and this is the jet stream right here. All right, and so let's say the polar vortex becomes weak. All right, that's when it can become wavy, and it actually can spill into the jet stream, and the jet stream can pull in a lot of cold air. All right, from the polar vortex. That is our main cold air source in the winter season. All right, but the reason why we were so warm in December is because we saw so much ridging here and so much moisture being pumped in from the Gulf of Mexico, that we couldn't get to that cold air source. All right, but what we're gonna see is gonna happen. We're gonna see this huge area of above average temperatures and ridging. It's going to take the place of where the cold air should be. All right, and so we'll put this in motion. All right, we're not gonna get too far ahead of ourselves here. But notice how this really gets ramped up, and we're well above 20. We're well above 20. We should be really well above 20 degrees below or above average here, but we can definitely see what we should be talking about here is ridging and low pressure. Ridging in the red, low pressure in the blue. All right, but we can see a high pressure blocking really starting to move into place here, but coming out of the west. Okay, and so we're going to see a huge cool down and a big uptick here in snowstorms and just piece of energy that are going to fly through. All right, out here into portions of northern Europe. All right, and so this is going to extend as far south as portions of Canada, Atlantic Canada. So this entire area is soon going to be impacted by this stratospheric warm up here. And by the way, the western side of this, all right, in areas that should be cold right now, we can see going back to a normal pattern. Well, this was actually when this is when the polar vortex was weakening out here, but you could definitely see that this looks nothing like it does here. All right, where we can see this portion of really the top of the world. All right, this would be Greenland. I'm pretty sure this would be Greenland, or no, Greenland is out here. All right, because this area really is supposed to be, there's supposed to be high pressure. All right, or sorry, low pressure. Sorry about that. And there is definitely supposed to be cooler temperatures, but we don't see that. All right, what we get is we get a big push in higher pressure blocking there of that cold air, and definitely above average temperatures, which should not be there. And this is very sudden because this comes really out of nowhere. See how we go from here? We don't really see any major ridging going on or any above average temperatures until this makes it all the way over here just north of Alaska. All right, and this would be close to Russia. All right, so this is really all the way out to like Asia and stuff. So this is really just the top of the world here. This is Asia over here, and then this is the Middle East and Europe. All right. And so once it gets to these areas, this area of blocking and ridging, I should say, it explodes here, and so that's where we can see all this cold air and this low pressure, all right, and storminess is all shoved either off to the east or off to the south, all right, and so that takes all the way out to January, all right, and then we can actually see. I mean, we're going to the long term here, all right. But what the GFS wants to happen is wants these two areas, I guess you could say, to actually they kind of interact with each other, and then eventually that the cold air source here, all right, your polar vortex actually shifts farther south, all right, and that could be questionable for the rest of January, all right, but I don't know if I explained that in the best way possible, but basically I just want to make sure that you guys can understand, just in at least in the slightest way, what's going on up in the atmosphere and on the top of the world, and how that's going to influence our weather down here in the United States. All right, so taking a look at our storm signal here, we're looking at the European model here. Just looking at our piece of energy, this is our relative vortices here. All right, up in the atmosphere, taking a look at what storms have the best potential to form. And so we can already see many different pieces of energy flying around at here, going either which way. All right, but the main one here we can see is this is your potential clipper. All right, I think is coming here is it's right here. All right, and it's coming down south through the Great Lakes, and that could definitely bring in some potential lake effect snow. All right, in portions of Michigan and into portions of Wisconsin, maybe upstate New York, into PA, and then Ohio. All right, and that kind of loses its energy and moves out. All right, but right behind it, we've got a big, two big pieces of energy here. We've got one coming through Texas. It's falling behind this one, but this one is definitely stronger coming out of the north. All right, and we see if these things will do anything with each other, and we don't. All right, they fail to merge together until they make it offshore. But this could actually interact with another piece of energy coming out of Canada here, and so that could actually become a big storm system. All right, so we got to watch that, and that's your first storm system that we're tracking. All right, and if we get this signal still, all right, by tomorrow, we're probably going to be able to get into the details on what this could potentially bring, all right, in terms of precipitation on the surface. But after that one, we have a second one. This is an even bigger one that's just on its own here, but it's a very strong one, very substantial piece of energy here that's coming through Texas, and this rolls right through the southeast, and bam, look at that. Very strong storm system. We're getting very far out, though. We're getting to really 220 hours out or so. All right, which is Sunday. So this is like a weekend, 2 days out. All right, so this is about 9-10 days out. All right, but I do think, and many others do, all right, that there will be a storm system that it may be weak, all right, but it also could be relatively strong here that comes through the United States in that time period. All right. But definitely when looking at the longer term, the European model is definitely more of a reliable model. I'm not saying that we're going to start taking this as a forecast. I'm just saying that the European for long range model runs, all right, it's a little bit more of just a better model to look at than the GFS, because the GFS like 99% of the time shows false information. All right, and that's common sense for a model to not to be incorrect 364 or 384 hours out. All right, but we're just basically looking at the storm signal, and taking a look at what storms have the best potential to do something out here, and that's why we're taking a look at the European model. All right, but yes, very active storm track coming up as well. We can actually start to see that El Nino patterns start to come into play, because if we start to see that ridging start impacting portions of Western Canada, we could actually start to see it spill into the northern U.S. We'll actually see the northern U.S. become warmer and drier. At the same time, you've got a very active Pacific jet stream here, and so that's going to be where our storm track is going to be. All right, it could be down here. It could at the end towards the Gulf Coast. It could actually cut through the United States, or it could take more of a northerly flow. All right, and it could cut through the central United States. It's got a few different ways it could go, but that's the general storm path that these storms will take as we get through winter. Right. So finally, we can actually take a look at our precipitation, our potential. We're going to be breaking down all three, or comparing, I should say. We're going to be comparing all three major models. All right, we're going to be taking a look at that first and that second storm. After that, we're just looking at what signal each model is showing, and just basically what we're going to be doing is comparing and contrasting. All right, So getting to our 48-hour mark, the GFS is also picking up on that very, very small clipper system, or upper level low, I should say, that's going to be sweeping through. All right, it wants that position farther north, so that more or less would bring a more of a lake effect snowstorm. All right, for portions of upstate New York, and here it does. We start to see a lot more. A lot more snowfall started to come into play, but it's definitely not getting near heavy snow. It's just light to moderate snowfall, some rain mixed in there. All right, so not an impactful system, and that's all we have for now. All right, but we've got either side of this surge of warmth, this small, very small surge of warmth, very weak, just area of warm air. All right, on either side of it, we've got two pretty strong, cold air masses here, and so finally, we actually starts to see the entire northern United States become engulfed in that cold air, and so at this point, we would be connected to our cold air source, and so we're getting to January 3rd here. So this is after New Year's. That New Year's storm that we were tracking a few days ago, this is it right here. It's really not looking like much at this point, and so we're not really watching that one. But this is that first one coming up here. We're getting a January 3rd and January 4th, which is Wednesday and Thursday of next week. All right, we've got a Gulf low starting to come up here, and we've got a lot of cold air coming in behind it. So this may be a recipe for some snow here in the portions of the Appalachian region, Appalachian region, the mountainous regions here of the interior Northeast into the Southeast. All right, that's where we have a possibility for some snowfall. All right, with this system, and here are your two pieces of energy. All right, here's one coming in down from the north, one coming up from the south. All right, what do they do? Well, we looked at the European model earlier. We saw those two pieces of energy. All right, but the European did not agree on them merging together early enough for a bigger snow or a bigger storm system to evolve. All right, but what does the GFS do? Well, the GFS doesn't have them merging as well, but it wants to take them farther north, and so that first piece of energy brings a little bit of snow here into the mountains of North Carolina and Tennessee. All right, but really the rest of the southeast is just getting a little bit of a washout there before that moves out. Some backside snow from that northern piece of energy could end up impacting the interior northeast, but that moves on out. All right, and that actually bombs out here on the GFS as a 970 millibar snowstorm there for Atlantic Canada and Nova Scotia. All right, so just watch out there, guys. That this is far out again. We're already we're getting a week out here by January 5th. All right, but I just want to let you guys know that if we actually end up seeing what the GFS is showing, all right, because we're running down the clock here for the storm system. We've still got a lot of time though for this to change. But if we do get the GFS scenario on the system, watch out there, guys. I just want everyone to be aware and prepared. All right. But here comes your second system. Here comes a piece of energy behind it. Takes that same Gulf low kind of look to it. All right. We got a lot of very heavy rainfall here going through the Gulf Coast. Notice how the storms are taking the same trajectory. They're riding the same Pacific jet stream. All right, but there is a lot of snow showing up here on the northern side of the storm. All right, and the colder and the warmer, the 32-degree line is kind of flattening out, so that's why we can see so much snowfall. Which really we don't. When you see snowfall, all right, this early into winter, as far south as northern Mississippi, Alabama, into southern Arkansas, all right, on the GFS, this is probably not going to happen. So this is an unreliable run on the GFS, the 18Z here. All right, but we do actually get some snow for some reason here. But we do see a 998 millibar low right through the southeast. Now it's off the coast at this point. All right, we can actually start to see a wintry mix impact portions of the backcountry of North Carolina and maybe the mountainous regions again getting a little bit of a snowstorm. We're not seeing any big snowstorms yet, all right, and because there's not enough cold air in place. We need a lot widespread cold air to be in place, and we need uh, at least one or two strong pieces of energy to move through. But that system moves right out, and we don't really see any of them going up to the northeast and becoming very, very strong like some others do. All right, but here we're getting January 7th. Remember that time frame I gave you guys earlier? I think it was like January 6th or January 12th. I think that in that time frame we might start to see a little bit more of an opening up for our cold air to flow more evenly or more nicely. I guess you could put it into the United States, and I think that's going to happen after January 10th. But here we go, January 8th. We're getting into La La Land here a little bit. We're getting 234 hours out, so very unreliable information showing up here. And you may be wondering, why the heck am I showing this if I'm telling you guys that this is false information, this is unreliable information? It's just because we want to know what storm signal is coming up. We want to compare and contrast models to see, what the, what the almost like what the mood is tonight. Like what are the models saying on what they think is going to happen? All right, as we get into January, because we really want to know. Everybody wants to know what's going to happen in January. All right. But here comes the GFS on a potential storm. Right, right at the towards the end of January 8th, January 9th, January 10th. That little time from there. So the end of the single digits, the first week of January. So getting into really the first few days into the midweek of the second week of January. All right, that was kind of complicated there. All right, but that's basically what we're talking about here. GFS has been consistently picking up on a possible storm system in that time frame. It's very far out. All right, so this is very unreliable still. All right, but definitely this time frame has been getting a little bit closer. This went from being at the end of the GFS model run to now almost halfway through. All right, and so here we go. We get a big system here at 981 millibar low. All right, and we get snow pretty far south with just a lot of energy flying around it here. We got a trough coming out of the southwest. All right, and that basically evolves into this big monster storm system. All right, this would bring very heavy rain. All right, and very strong winds up the eastern seaboard. We could see just a complete washout for the eastern U.S. And then on the northern backside of the system, we get some snowfall. Very unreliable information there as well. But on the backside of that, the GFS has been also hinting that there will be a very big cool down here, and we actually see widespread cold air here. I mean, this is probably going to be the most substantial cold air of the year if this were to happen. All right, but the GFS has been showing this a lot. All right, so it's got a pretty big scenario. All right, for us here after January 12th. I think that's going to be a very active time frame. I think really, if I could tell you when I think that the polar vortex will be opened up here for that cold air to flow into the United States. That not just that one quick, burst of cold air, that massive widespread cool down, that Arctic blast. All right, that massive cool down. I think that that's going to be after January 14th. I think January 14th to January 24th, January 21st, we're going to get into our first week of major snowstorms. I think we're gonna get big snowstorms. All right. I just think that that's gonna, I just think personally that we're gonna start to see some more active storms to move through, a more active storm track, and I think we could become influenced by the polar vortex. But a lot of you are probably thinking that this is very far out, and I just said that. All right, but I'm just telling you guys what I personally think is going to happen. All right, and so we just gotta look at the model guidance, and when it comes out that far out, I will take a look at it. But really, we're not gonna dive into the big details until we get into our forecasting range. All right. But after that storm system, we don't really see much other than that big cool down on the GFS. What does the Canadian show? All right. Well, we're getting into New Year's Eve, and here's that clipper. The Canadian model is also picking up on that. So the first two major models are agreeing here on that Clipper system, and we haven't looked at the European model, but it looks like on the vortices that the European model was picking up on that. But there it is on the Canadian model, and it shows that same lake effect snowstorm and snow event for upstate New York here, the Lake Erie area. All right, and then that moves out. What comes up behind it? Well, there's that first system. All right, right around January 3rd. All right, and the Canadian model wants snow positioned farther south as well, into portions of Oklahoma and then even into Arkansas. All right, so this is not that far out. We're getting 126 hours out, so about 6 days, or 4 days out. All right, and then that moves up into the northeast, but the Canadian model wants that to be a little bit stronger, a little bit earlier. All right, it wants it to really pull and tug on that cold air here. It wants to pull in a lot of cold air on the backside, so that would bring a snowstorm for the northeast. And here it goes. It also bombs out, so it looks like the GFS is not alone here on that topic. All right, but it wants that to happen sooner than the GFS. Therefore, we actually see it happening over Maine than rather than Nova Scotia. All right, but yeah, that could certainly be a snow event for areas up the I-95 corridor. All right, not a big snow event, but I don't want to get into specifics again because we're still 150 hours out. All right, but that could definitely bring maybe a few inches of snow, and I really want to stay away from specifics here. But that moves up the northeast, and on the backside we get a Arctic plunge. All right, of cold air. But we also do see some backside snow. Here comes your second system. All right, it's pretty much looking the same strength and takes the same storm track here. That moves up the coast, and that doesn't bring as much snow. I mean, it brings some snow again into Oklahoma, into Arkansas, brings snow into Tennessee, and then up through the Appalachian Mountains here, and then moves on out. All right, so those are the two systems that we can start to watch. All right, and start to track. And we can't forecast it. All right, because this is not a forecast. We're talking about at the pretty much at the end of this week into the beginning of next week. So we're talking about in a week in advance. All right. But we can definitely start tracking the systems and what the models are hinting could happen. Just when they actually come into forecasting range, what we could be dealing with. All right. And the Canadian model wants a lot of deepening here of our cold air after January 7th, so a little bit earlier here. So it actually the Canadian model wants that big cool down to happen as early as January 8th. All right, which is almost a week ahead of the GFS. So very big model disagreement there. So that also shows some uncertainty here in the future. And we look at the European model here. All right, what does the European model show? All right, here comes that Clipper. All right, so all three models are agreeing on that Clipper system, so we can check that off. We can actually get into the details on that because this is in forecasting range. The European model doesn't even want anything really. It doesn't even want its own low pressure after this moves over the Great Lakes, and then we get a little bit of snowfall, like a tiny pinch of snow, for portions of Ohio into PA and then into upstate New York. All right. Other than that, that is all that the European shows, and then behind that, here comes your first system. All right. And that moves up into the northeast. All right. It doesn't bring any. The European doesn't want any snow though into. Notice how the European doesn't want any snow into Arkansas. It doesn't want any snow into Mississippi, Alabama. All right. That's one big reason why it shows that the GFS is it's just not a reliable model when it comes to snowfall, and also, all right, it's just wrong. All right, and I just think that the European model is going to be right on this one. Very far out though. Well, not very far out, but we're getting far out here, 150 hours out. So again, we don't want to get into specifics, but we do see an all-rain event with a Gulf flow coming through the southeast that heads on up to the northeast and pulls in that second piece of energy here but we don't see that being as significant as the Canadian GFS want it to be. All right, so that's going to bring in less snowfall for the Northeast. But then again, we see another, that same system begins to bomb out there over portions of Nova Scotia. And so that's all three models showing that to happen. So big model agreement there for that to happen. So watch out for that, Nova Scotia and Maine. All right, when you see that much model agreement, we just went through all three major models. When you see that much model agreement this early, all right, that's a pretty good signal for something big like that to happen. But all three models take that storm up to Nova Scotia and really have that impacting and hitting hard. All right, but here comes that second system right behind it. All right, and the European now flipping sides with the GFS. The GFS really showed less snow on this one, and the European wants an all-out ice storm and winter storm for portions of Oklahoma into portions of Texas. All right, and we see heavy rain on the front side of this, becoming negatively tilted. All right, but it does actually want a very big division here in our cold air and our warm air, so that 32-degree line getting a little bit more broad. All right, but we're getting towards the end of the run, and that second system moves through the southeast, and it brings that wintry mix into portions of the Carolinas here, and the GFS and the Euro both agree though on the the tiny pockets of snow into portions of North Carolina, but really other than that, nothing much. All right, and then that moves into the Northeast, and actually no, it moves out from the coast of the Carolinas. All right, so we just compared all three major models, and that was your latest storm signal on the 18Z. So what you basically saw was we broke down, all right, what storm systems that that all the models were agreeing on. All right, and it looks like we're definitely going to see that Clipper. That Clipper is certainly in forecasting range. We're going to talk about that tomorrow. We're going to talk about snowfall totals with that tomorrow. That is in forecasting range. All the models agree on that. All right, that first system, all the models definitely agree on that storm system existing. All right, we're still not getting agreement. We're still not getting great agreement on what the precipitation on the surface could be like for that storm. Pretty much the same as the second storm. All right, but the second storm, that signal for the second storm is still there on every model. All right, so model agreement is pretty tight here and pretty strong on the storm systems coming into play. All right, and then we're not going to take a look here at the the extended future. All right, but we will look at that on the GFS anomalies, because I do want to explain and go through something else there. All right, but yeah, those two storm systems are definitely one that we can start to watch, because we're starting to get into that, like, week out time frame, so that's not that bad. All right, but it's still kind of far out. All right, so taking a look here at our current projected temperature anomalies on the GFS. So taking a look at when our substantial cold air could come in, and just starting out here, we can see we've got a massive ridge over Canada. I mean, all of Canada here is just baking and toasting. We're getting like 30 degrees above historical average here, and this is, I mean, we are very, very warm, and we don't really see any signs of a cool down here. We see tiny pockets of cold air coming through the very far to the south right here, really into Florida. It's a tiny burst of cold air into the central United States, and then that ridge slowly starts to open up a little bit. So now we can start to see some cold air entering portions of the southeast right around January 2nd. All right, so if, let's say, that first storm system actually comes in earlier, and it actually comes in while that cold air is in place, right around January 2nd there, all right, that could be when we actually start to see snow with that system. All right, here comes that second system. What could be ahead of that system? Well, on the GFS, all right, which, again, it's a unreliable model getting far out, but this isn't that far out, all right? It wants a mix of cold and warm air here, so some warm air, some cold air nearby. All right, that's pretty questionable. All right, but we get to January 5th, and we start to see more of a cold blast come down, a little bit of a cold front there by January 5th. and we can see the eastern U.S. is now well below average, and the west is getting below average. All right, but we're still seeing that warm air nearby hanging up in Canada. All right, but when does everything open up? That's what we're trying to figure out. All right, but notice here as we get to January 7th, this is when things get shaken up a little bit. All right, this is the time frame I'm watching for things to get, very, very active. All right, and this video is going to be very long. I apologize about this being maybe the longest video I've ever done. All right, but what's going to happen as we get into this time frame is I think that we're going to start to see Western Canada start to get very cold again, southwestern Canada, and we're going to start to see the western U.S. become very, very cold. That's what we see here in the GFS. All right, getting 216 hours out, so very far out once again. But we see the western U.S. getting very cold. All right, and the eastern U.S. becomes a little bit warmer. All right, but here we go, January 8th. Look at this massive cold air, just a massive burst of cold air coming in, all right, into the western U.S. And you can see these brighter shades of pink. We're getting 16 to 20 degrees below historical average. We're getting very, very cold in the western U.S. And just as we get farther into the run, we see a continuous line of cold air coming in. And we'll look at the North American side of this. We'll look at North America here. And look at this. All right, all that warm air and that ridging actually shifts over, and it shifts over to the east. And so now we can start to see all that cold air coming down from our polar vortex. All right, and so here we go. We go back up to go back down to the United States, and we're getting here to January 10th. We're back to that pattern where we have either warm air in the east or the west, and we've got cold air on the other side of the country. And bam, look at this. We've got this is a massive cold outbreak. I don't even have words for this. All right, but yeah, we just got a massive cold blast here, and this is January 12th, guys. All right, so very far out. This is getting way too far out to say anything about this other than a signal for this, but there is a very strong signal that something like this could actually happen after the week of January 7th to the 14th. All right, I think that we will actually be dealing with a time frame, or a time period, I should say, where we're going to be in widespread below average temperatures. And if we get a storm system to come in, that could be the key for a big snowstorm. All right. So for the final part of the update, we look at our current projected snowfall totals out by the GFS. We're only looking at this for a snow signal, not because we want to look at our snow totals out to January 14th. All right, that's pretty ridiculous to be looking at that unless you just want to look at it for the heck of it. All right, but you can see that there's a substantial signal. All right, the signal is there for snowstorms. But I want to talk about the western U.S. We saw the big cold front. All right, coming in right around January 10th to January 12th. All right, and here it is. We see it on the snowfall totals. Look at this. We're seeing very widespread. I would definitely call this above average snow for the entire western U.S. The eastern U.S., on the other hand, very below average. So I think the eastern U.S., it's going to take time. All right, but I think we're going to be very, very warm. All right, for the most of the beginning of January. But I think once we get to mid-January, January 14th, guys, I think that after the week of January 7th to the 14th, I think that we can start to see those very big, widespread cold blasts be able to reach as far east as the eastern U.S. So it's going to get very warm for probably a long time here in the eastern U.S. Some pockets of cold air could snake their way through. But I think it's going to take time before we start to see that big, extensive cold air start to really get going here and just move right through, down through Canada, into the eastern U.S. like that. All right, that is where these snow totals will definitely start to tick up, because simply we're going to have the cold air, we're going to have the storms, we get snowstorms, all right? So that is all I got for you guys. Thank you so much for coming to watch. I'll see you guys in the next video. I know probably none of you watched through this whole thing because this was 50 minutes long. This is my longest video ever, guys. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of hype going on. I know that you guys can probably all see that and see why. All right. And so we see on all of the models are showing some snow. All right, for the eastern U.S., a lot of snow though on the GFS here for the western U.S. All right, but it's just a matter of just watching the signal, comparing the models each day, and just getting to that time frame that we're that suggested time frame that we're looking at. All right, and then finally just taking a look at what the models are saying once again, and starting to break it down. All right, that's what we got to do as we get closer and closer to really the pinpointed time frame for me is after January 14th is when I think things are going to get very, very active. All right, so thank you so much for coming to watch, guys, and I will see you guys in the next video.